Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I am Ishvi Mishra from Ukiyoto Publishing, and as part of our yearly literary festival Solstice, I am in conversation today about women inspiring change with some phenomenal writers. So without further ado, let me introduce Saachi, Priyadarshini, Lata, Sunaina, and Danielle. Sunaina, would you start by introducing yourself and your book to the audience, please?
Sure, thank you, SV. Uh, so my book, firstly, hi, I'm Sunaina. I'm basically a corporate professional. I'm a product manager in an MNC, and a person who's pursuing one's dream to write. So my debut novel is Krasivaya, which was published last year, and Krasivaya basically deals with journey of life. It's a ordinary tale of a protagonist's life, which revolves mainly around mental health issues. So that having that said, the theme of the book remains very realistic. So I would say it's a realistic fiction, which I present so that the readership finds it more relatable and hopefully get some take away some good inspiring message.
Brilliant. We would definitely talk about it more as we get further into the conversation. Priyadarshini, would you like to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yeah, sure. So, hello everybody. My name is Priyadarshini. I am a writer. I'm also a teacher. I teach English language and literature, and I'm also a researcher. I've done research with UNESCO Sahapedia, and I've published two books with Ukiyoto, The Postwoman and Other Stories, and Unsung Sheroes and Heroes. So, in The Postwoman and Other Stories, what I'm trying to do is break gender stereotype for young girls. And in Unsung Sheroes and Heroes, I talk about the lives of everyday ordinary women and their skills and their achievements. So that's about me.
Okay. Danielle, would you like to go next?
Okay. Hi, my name is Danielle Ceeline Ramonal. I'm a dance anthropologist and an artist. And yes, I'm an author. So I'm showing my book here. Let Me Learn from a Tree is actually my third book, but I've had, because I've published two children's books before. And when I wrote Let Me Learn from a Tree, it's actually for readers to actually reflect on some everyday things that we can draw parallelism from, and which is comparable to trees. And it talks about different kinds of themes. It talks about racism. It talks about culture. So it plays around different kinds of tones also, sometimes angry, sometimes poetic. So it's an intimate collection and of lessons that we can get from trees and our experiences with them. And I hope that the readers will enjoy reading it. So it's different from my first two books. That's it.
Okay. Saachi, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Saachi Dhillon. I'm a marketing communication professional and also an author. So, my debut book, which is called Dreaming of Everest, just got released 2 months ago with Ukiyoto. And it's based on my trek to the Everest Base Camp. So, through the book, I want to inspire people and women specifically to go out there, chase their dreams, not think that something is impossible, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to what you think. So if you do keep working towards your dreams, you can achieve it. That's the gist of the book, given that I had very limited trekking experience at the time that I went on this trek.
Okay.
And yeah, happy to say it's also doing really well in terms of
Definitely. Lastly, Lata.
Thanks, Isvi, for having us here. My name is Lata Vishwanath, and I have authored these two books. Actually, I have written some more, and one have just got released yesterday by Ukiyoto. So now I'm going to talk about these two books, which were actually published and released in 2017.
Okay.
So my first debut is a non-fiction book. It's Autumn Showers, which is actually autobiographical, which is actually talks about my family, about 100 years of span, where my ancestors changed their profession. I mean, basically agriculture. They were all into agriculture. So it talks about in an interesting manner. I have kind of covered many issues which relates to agriculture. It's a narrative non-fiction, but a creative non-fiction. So this was published by Terry Press, which is the Energy and Resources Institute. To tell a little bit more about myself, I'm an engineer, electronics engineer, and a material scientist.
Right.
So I got into writing after working for many years, and so past 15 years I've been writing. I have written for magazines and 5 books, out of which 3 have been published now. And this one is actually called Singapore Sling. It is a collection of short stories, all set in Singapore. Because when I started writing, I was I was living in Singapore. So these are all women-centric stories.
Right.
So set in contemporary Singapore, which is which any even new immigrant or anybody could relate to.
Right.
So this is about the 2 books that I have, and just yesterday Ukiyoto has been very kind to release my 3rd book, which is collection of verses, which is quotes and poetry. It's called, the title is The Dulcet of Pink Petals.
Right.
Which is also a kind of pink petals actually connotes feminine, feminism. So
okay.
I would say
it's nice that you talk about feminism, because while everyone here were introducing their books, I couldn't help but wonder how each of your books have these variety of topics that you talk about, but also I can categorize them in an umbrella term of the betterment of society, because I found feminist themes, political themes, social themes in each one of your books. Like talking about solo traveling, or your life in pandemic, your wins and losses, your happy days, your not so happy days, or practicing the principle of acceptance, or like quenching your curiosity, or invoking empathy and love. So all these themes are sprinkled everywhere in your book. So talking about this, I would like to invite each one of you to talk about one specific book where you think that the themes in your book inspires change in women. So let's start with Sunaina.
Sure, Isri, thanks again. So I actually, I'll just quote Virginia Woolf here. She said that, I want to write about silence, and is something that is unsaid. So
Right.
my book, Krasiwaya, when I started inspired with this particular, quote, I would say. My book revolves around the theme of mental health, as I have mentioned earlier, but why the protagonist is a woman is why I think like the women are very emotionally strong, they're emotionally intelligent.
Right.
Okay. And I think the way I wanted to convey, the message I wanted to convey in the book would have not been done by any other way but a woman. In story, I would just like to mention, like, there is a point where the protagonist does a mistake, and when a woman does mistake, we all know how it is in this society, right? So on that particular to bring light on that it's okay to make a mistake, but from there you take and make it right. That's all life is about. And why is it any different for a woman? So that's what I really wanted to bring into attention while I walk through my characters on a light of maybe her womanhood. So that's one of the point, unbiased of what challenges we face. We know the dynamics of the society, but it's a high time now that we know our self-worth and we make it right for ourselves. So that's what I want to inspire. When I talk about change, I talk about empowering movement. It's women for women. So that's basically what I want to bring in light.
And I think that's beautifully put, because like you said, making it right for yourself, it's about, it's threading this concept of accepting yourself, which I feel like also is a common theme with Danielle's book, because you talk about quenching your curiosity, accepting yourself, asking questions. So would you like to add to that, Danielle?
Okay, because when I wrote the book, I wasn't really specifically coursing it through being categorized as with a feminist move, you know, but I do want to push for women's roles and women's for women to be acknowledged more, although now it's happening, it's gaining ground.
Right.
However, it still needs to move forward, and that's what I've been doing. And I think in connection to what Sunaina said, am I saying your name right? I hope I'm saying it correctly. Sunaina?
Sunaina.
Sunaina, okay, Sunaina, sorry. Okay, so as what Sunaina said, there's a portion in my book that it's focusing on bonsai, you know, how a bonsai becomes a bonsai.
Right.
And I wanted to dive into what women actually do to themselves, not just physically, but also, you know, emotionally, mentally, to achieve that bonsai state. You know, just quickly, I'm going to go through just some lines here. In the beginning, it says, the most important technique in growing and cultivating a bonsai is pruning. It is used to dwarf trees and control their growth.
Right.
With scissors, the cultivator would have to snipe, clip, and cut, especially those trees that have unnatural twists or disproportionately thick branches to keep them from developing into their full sizes. So it's there's parallelism there in terms of the potential and the capacity of a woman, not just physically also, although I focused more also on the physical here because I was so angry that, you know, the beauty culture that's happening now, that okay, white is beautiful, thin is sexy, you know, those kinds of beauty culture that has been forced, actually rammed down our throats by you know, social media, by all kinds of platforms. So that's part of what I wanted to really wanted to put out there and to think about it, not to insist on it, but to reflect on it as to where your stance is on these particular matters. So yeah, so that's a portion here in a chapter.
I think it's really interesting how you say that you don't categorize your book as a feminist read, but also there's so many feminist themes that sprinkled all over it. Like you mentioned, like beauty standards or just the way society looks at women. And that also reminds me how Priyadarshini in her book mentions that she doesn't want people to, like, you know, look into her book as, you know, reading for morals, but more like enjoy your book, not categorizing it in a way. So would you like to add something to that, Priyadarshini?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I would like to talk a little bit about unsung heroes and heroes.
Okay.
So, yeah, in that book, many people have come up to me and they've asked me, why have you titled your book as heroes and why not heroines instead of heroes and heroines? So I tell them that the word heroes is actually something which Maya Angelou coined, because she felt like heroine has the word he in it, which is not adequate to represent women. So that I got inspired by her. And so my book, I think we all agree that feminism is for all women across strata and across class and caste and all that. So my book really represents women belonging to all kinds of places and all strata of society. And I wanted to talk about the lives of ordinary women, which are often ignored and which often we don't talk about in such platforms. So that, and I'm really happy because a lot of young girls have come up to me and asked me what's behind your title, and we find it really interesting.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that's beautifully put. And would you also like to mention a bit about your other book, which is The Coast Women and Other Stories?
Yeah, so there also, the reason why I titled the book The Post Woman is because I think language itself is gendered. English itself is gendered in many ways. We still stick on to businessman, postman, fisherman, craftsman. In my book, so what I try to do is I try to subvert these kinds of words, and then I try to bring in young girls who do the same role, so that young girls don't grow up with this notion that this occupation is only for men alone. So that's about two of my books.
Right. That's beautifully
Yeah.
put. And I really like how you talk about subverting gender norms, because this is something you have common with Saachi here, because you in your book talk about your travel and like, solo traveling and following your passion. So would you like to add something to that?
Sure. So I've been traveling solo since a really young age. Since 17, I stumbled upon it, and ever since I've just been traveling everywhere. I have noticed that here in India, at least in the last decade or so, you see a lot more women or a lot more solo women travelers exploring, but it's still supposed to be scary. Like, people ask me, aren't you scared? What if something happens, this and that? Of course, you make your plans, you do sufficient research, you try to be as safe as possible. But when you're traveling, or even when you're trekking, for example, like I was to Everest Base Camp, which is what I've written about in my book, it's something you can't really predict. The weather can go wrong, anything can happen. You can fall terribly sick, which is what happened to me when I was on this trek. So while it was anyway challenging being a high altitude trek, because I got sick somewhere close to base camp, although I was so close to my goal, it was difficult to just put one step in front of the other. But then it just comes down to how badly you want something. So I did struggle. There were people to help me as well. But then it's all about really being focused on what you want in spite of the many challenges that come along your way. In terms of trekking, again, according to India Hikes, which is the largest trekking organization here, only 30% of people who go on treks are women. While this number has slowly been increasing, it's still much lower if you really think about it. There are times when there are just boys or men, and there'll be two women or girls in a trekking group. So the more difficult a trek gets, especially if it's high altitude, the lesser number of women you will generally see.
Right.
So my idea is, while I haven't really focused on this aspect too much, I think it does come out because I am the protagonist in the book. So through my voice and through my journey, I do hope that many more women get inspired to explore. Even if it's not about trekking, just go out there, get out of your comfort zone, and go after what you want.
What I personally love about your book is kind of embracing unpredictability, which is also something I find in Lata's book, which is Dil of Pink Petals. Because you've talked about the pandemic itself, the wins and losses, the happy days, the not so happy days. So would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, actually, I didn't intend to make it in, women oriented, but then because at that time, because the way it happened to me personally, because I became grandmother of a small granddaughter, and it was like whatever I was writing, I felt like I was telling her, and it was kind of, and there were, many incidents that were kind of very shocking, and because there was a rape, which was, that was completely soul, killing. So that happened, and many such. So my whatever I wrote, actually, it felt like I was telling her, and so that's how it built up. And because it's very important that then I realized that why I was kind of writing with her in mind, because that's how the life is going to be ahead of her. Where she will face challenges, and there are many points in life where one has to rise above the above themselves, and to become stronger. So they were kind of lessons that I wanted to convey, and that's how it became dulcet of pink petals.
I personally think that's a very beautiful title that you have for your book. And I also really like how even just talking about your personal books, we can see that each book has either protagonists who are women, or the audience, the ones you are trying to say these stories to, are women. So that itself, in my opinion, starts, inspiring change, because here you are solely talking about women. You're talking about women in society, or just the fact that how you want the society to look at women and see them as these strong characters in their lives, right? So talking about that, I would like to ask each of you how you want to inspire change professionally and personally in your lives, because each one of you have built your own careers. So I would like to know a bit about that. So starting with Priyadarshini.
Okay, so in my I'll talk about my own field, that is teaching. So in many ways, I really feel like gender discrimination still exists in teaching, where some jobs are given to women. So for example, if you invite a guest over to speak, you are the person who has to go give the bouquet because you're a woman.
Right.
So
Right.
these kinds of practices still exist in schools, and this is something that I'm slowly trying to change. And I'm trying to have discussions with my colleagues, and so I am trying to do this. And on a personal level, I think I do come from a very progressive family. So on a personal level, I don't face a lot of challenges, but professionally, because I'm out there in the world, I do face these challenges, and I'm trying to overcome them slowly by having conversations. And I also talk about my books and all of these things. And a nice thing is I work with a lot of kids, because I think what I desire to do also reflects in them, and we have a
Right.
really good rapport and a lot of discussion. So that is something really nice.
Oh, I am personally very inspired by you, that you're trying to shape the minds of kids. So that's amazing. Saachi, would you like to talk a bit more about, like, traveling as a profession that you have, or travel writing?
So, yeah, personally, I want to inspire change through my words, through storytelling, by bringing out my experiences of being to different places, doing a variety of things, whether it's adventure or just generally exploring a new place. Um, I just want to make it more relatable to the end reader, especially women, just to tell them that, it's not that scary a world out there. If you are, see, a lot of it also comes down to preparation. So just be prepared, expect the unexpected, and just go out there. But please go out there. That's actually my single aim through my writings. I want people to go and explore whatever it is that they want to do with their own lives. Professionally, so I'm a marketeer. My job is to promote varied types of content because of the field I'm in. But at work, I'm also a part of something we call the Women Berg. So it's a huge multinational that I work for. And again, majority of the people there are men, even in your senior leadership positions. Luckily, we still have a woman as a business head, but through this Berg, we're just trying to encourage other women in the organization to come forward, to step up the ladder and really touch whatever heights they can. So, yeah.
Again, like I mentioned before, I really like how you focus on embracing unpredictability and just kind of like really focusing on following your passion, which is something I really see in Daniel, because you have a very interesting career going on. So would you like to talk a bit about that?
Okay, so as a dance anthropologist and artist, I try to use different kinds of mediums to share my work, to share some things. Like for me, my focus has always been about Indigenous communities and the role of women in these Indigenous communities. So it's what I do with my art. And now with the books, I also try to expand the audience, and not just within the performing arts arena, but also outside for readers. And it's the same thing for my children's books, because you know, it's good to actually reach out to children, and sometimes you underestimate the capacity of a child's mind, because I was told so many times that Danielle, your books are not children's books, they're actually books for adults, because you're diving into topics that are quite too heavy for them. So I said, no, but when are you going to introduce these kinds of topics to the children? Right? When is the right time? There is no right time, because anything could happen, especially now. The time is, our times now are really different. So for me, I think it's, I'm using different kinds of mediums to reach out to different kinds of people, and to just reflect on these things that sometimes we take for granted. Sometimes we like to sweep under the rug because they're uncomfortable topics. We don't like to talk about them out there. So yeah, so that's the goal.
Well, Sunaina here is a mental health advocate, and I think you would you can add to what Danielle has said. Very, I mean, you'll be able to understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, definitely. I really feel it is important to communicate and talk about these things. And as Danielle mentioned, like, you know, it starts from children. Because, you know, they are the future. So it obviously starts from them. And it's very, when we talk about women empowerment and the challenges which we are facing, we obviously are here to make the future better, right? So that the efforts we are putting right now, it's all for that. And I personally feel it will come when we forfeit the thought legacy, the inherited thought legacy we have. And that's very important, because as a woman, we wear multiple hats, we have multiple responsibility, but in a process, we should not forget our crown of being a woman. So that's very important. And that's what I personally try to do in my daily life. I come from a small town. Okay, I'm a small town girl. And uh, you know, personally, I have broken those thought legacy by myself, and obviously by support of my really wonderful mother. So it was necessary. So, because see, if you're a mom and you have faced a challenge, you need to make it better for your daughter. The same goes for mother-in-laws. Like, if you're a mother-in-law and you have faced certain challenges, you have to make it better for your daughter-in-laws. That's the thing. And uh, that's what I feel personally it's important. We need to voice our opinion. We need to show that we need to stand for ourselves. We need to put our foot down for things that we believe in, the things that we are passionate about. And it's all about how we want to identify ourselves in the society. So that's very important. And I do the same thing professionally as well. Like, I work in a corporate profession, and it we are still in the we will find that gender bias on taking on certain projects, or if it is promotions, we find all these things. So face these things in our life very frequently, I think. And all from my end, what I do is voice out about it. I really make it clear that that's not how things should work. And I and that's the attempt I'm doing. Like, well, I'm writing as well. Though I am not like I would not classify myself as a feminist writer, because I want to write about a plethora of subject that is unheard and misinterpreted. But having said that, yeah, it is very important for me, for the world to know as well, that what we face as a women, and how we can make it better for our future generation. So that's where all the difference is.
Okay. Lata, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I really liked what Sunaina has just mentioned. I think we all agree as women, we need to voice out, and we need to first of all recognize where we are not being treated equally, or where we need to stand for ourselves. So all these things we need to kind of recognize first, and stand for our rights and, fight. I mean, it comes to that. And the best way for me, as I feel, it's, I mean, if we are writers, we are fortunate because we can have characters in fiction writing. We can, create characters with, different situations. We can project our protagonists where they have, overcome such, problems and how they have solved their, situations, like they have stood up for themselves and, so that's basically, that's the advantage of having, being writers. And I think there's a power of word that is, so we can use, to bring change and to at
Right.
least make people or the readers understand. And so, and if for women it's nothing like reading someone whom they can relate to, and just wherever it's possible, just emulate those characters and personalities. And so because this is now we are in new millennium, and there's nothing that should come in between us and our ambitions and our goals.
Right.
So so we have to not only stand for ourselves, for other women. So basically, not only writing for me, if I find something there where women are being not, especially those belonging to economically lower classes, I try to see that there is some justice given to them. If I find they are not being, they are being not, I mean, being treated properly, or it can be just anything like pay parities or whatever it is, So I try to voice actually for them. And so that's how I think we can bring change, basically. And I write more and more about women, actually, not only through fiction writing, but also real stories. So in the past, I have written about very strong women, social entrepreneurs, who have brought change to women in kind of small villages, rural women. That's where we find that women have not actually, they're still lagging behind. If you see the, compare urban women to rural women, there's a lot of difference still now. Still in India and probably other parts of developing world. So I try
Lata,
to bring out
I
those
will have
stories.
to interrupt you here because we're running out of time.
Yes.
So, I mean, this discussion was beautiful. I think there were so many insightful and reflective thought processes that I see in each of you. And personally, it has inspired me as well because I myself am in very early years of my career. So it's very inspiring to talk to Ukiyoto authors who are inspiring change with their writing, because as you know, a pebble can create a lot of ripples in the in a lake, right? So thank you so much everyone for joining me today. This was a beautiful discussion, and thank you for inspiring change, not just in women, but in society at large, because as we know, it's not just women who need to change their minds or like follow their passion and ambitions, but also society needs to let them do that. Society needs to empower them to do that. So yes, thank you so much for this discussion today, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely day ahead. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.